All right, guys, welcome to class one, part three, glowing color in the luminous landscape. This is, I'm going to be demoing color wheel. I just kind of made that this morning. I just took a garbage can, flipped it upside down and traced around it, and then another little round surface. So anything circular can work. And then those little lines there are just so I can do some color mixing from across the color wheel and show you. I like to use permanent marker when I'm doing my color wheels because it allows me to paint over the top of it with my oils, and it shows the transparency of the color. If I can see the black line of the permanent marker really clearly, then I know that I'm working with either thin paint or very transparent paint. If it covers completely and I don't see the line, then it's very opaque, and then you can figure out if it's semi-transparent or semi-opaque accordingly. So that's why I like to do my color wheels oftentimes with permanent marker. And those lines on the bottom right there, well, I added extra lines so I could be painting across those lines so we can see when I want to make a dark opaque or a dark transparent or a warm transparent or a warm opaque, and on and on. So I'm just going to show you very quickly. Here is my palette, the colors. This is the palette I typically work on. It's just a big piece of glass that I got cut. It's on top of a workbench, which I love because all the storage space for all my brushes and all my paints, you know, I've got them sorted out. I got my white drawer, my yellow drawer, red drawer. You can see how you know, those are, you can see how many tubes of paint and brushes I have. I've got hundreds of tubes of paint and hundreds of brushes, which, you know, probably is actually a big waste of money because a lot of those paints will probably just kind of dry in the tube because I don't use them very often. So maybe I can help you guys to decide on the colors that you actually want and need. I did bring out my 3 different browns. This is the transparent earth red. This is a fast matte color, but you don't have to worry about that. Gamblin is getting rid of its fast matte line. I think they're going to be calling it quick dry, and I don't know what colors they're offering in those. But I liked this color for especially when I was out plein air painting and wanted to just kind of sketch in my design with this color, but it does do some weird things. It kind of gets really stiff in the tube and stuff, so I see why they're maybe discontinuing this line. The burnt umber is a newer color that I've been playing with the last year and liking quite a lot. Again, it also dries quickly. This first one I was talking about is very transparent and makes kind of a lot of kind of a sepia tone color. And this one's just a dark, also warmish brown color. And then I do have some burnt sienna. I don't use burnt sienna very often. I pretty much stick to these two. You can see it's pretty new tube still. But I do have a lot of artists that use burnt sienna, and I love the colors they're getting, so I do own it. But I'm not going to be using these today. I'll be explaining these as we go forward in more detail. So I'm just going to put those aside for right now. And can everybody hear me okay? Because I am kind of far from the microphone, but it's usually pretty good. I did also grab a tube of black. If you really have a hard time getting away from black, or you really want to, you know, make some true dark colors, I might suggest for the oil painters in the group, chromatic black. I find alters the colors the least. It does a great job of darkening the color, but you know, if you add black to a red, generally it just becomes a very dull red. Really dull, blacks dull down colors, and most blacks in truth are very, very, very dark bluish colors. Chromatic black, I find, alters the color the least, but it does a nice job of darkening it. So if you want to experiment with blacks, you may want to experiment with chromatic black. But I will also not be using that color today. So I will be using the 2 reds, 2 yellows, 2 blues, and white, and showing you kind of how much variation. I always set up my palette the same. I find it's just like a keyboard. You know, I don't want to be thinking about or searching for or hunting for my colors when I'm mixing. A lot of times my color mixing is fairly instinctual at this point because I've been using these colors so long that a lot of times I'm barely even looking. I just know where the colors are. Like, oh, I need a little more red. It's in this area. Oh, the blues are going to be in this area. The yellow's there. And I used to have my white on the right, but I've moved it to my left, and I find for some reason that's easier. So you may want to experiment with how you set up your colors. I set up my colors as if they were a color wheel, and in the same order that I would put them out on a color wheel, meaning that I'm going to put out this is a cadmium yellow light. But I oftentimes would be using just any other yellow because, again, I don't use cadmiums very often any longer. For my orangish yellow, I'm going to be squeezing out Indian yellow. You could use a cadmium yellow deep or a cadmium yellow dark in that space if you wanted to. And again, right now I'm just showing you how it would look on a color wheel. So this is my yellow that's going to lead towards green. This is my yellow that's going to lead towards orange. So then I'm going to think, well, what's my red that leads towards orange? That's the color I would want next to it. So in this case, it is a cadmium red light. Very, very strong color, just so you know. Then I'm going to put my red that leans towards purple, which in my instance is my Quinacridone Red. It might be Alizarin Crimson for you if you don't have quinacridone. You don't want to go out and buy it just yet. Then, so this is my red that leans towards purple. So I'm going to go to my blue that leads towards purple, which is, for me, is my Ultramarine Blue. And then I'm going to put my blue that would lean towards green.
Alexa, stop.
So that is how I'm going to put these colors on the color wheel. Oops. Let's see if we can. That's how I'm going to put the colors that I'm going to put on the color wheel. So I'm going to put my yellows here and here, my reds here and here, and my blues here and here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Use a palette knife so I don't have to clean my brush and take a lot of time. Palette knife is a lot easier to clean. Will stay a lot pure, so I'm just going to put a nice spot of that there. See if I can leave that light on or not. I might have to turn it off. Then I'm going to add my orangish yellow, whichever one I decided on there. My orangish red, right about there. My purplish red, right about there. My purplish blue over here. Has everybody done color wheels in the past?
Yes.
Yeah, they're kind of annoying. Oops. And I know a lot of students don't like it when they hear that I'm going to be doing color wheels, but I do them a lot actually, or I do color charts a lot. And I'll show you some of those in other classes where I'm constantly kind of experimenting on the side of my paintings, just seeing how colors mix together and what my options are. So down here, I'm going to do a very quick color wheel of if I was just to choose one of each primary. So we can decide. I think I'll put my Ultramarine Blue on there. And I'm going to use this yellow because the other one feels like it's already kind of leaning towards. And then which one of these reds would you guys like to see on there? In the past, I was using the Cad Red medium. That's when I was doing the full year of just using a split, I mean, a very basic primary palette, very limited. But I do know that a lot of people who do limited palettes these days use the quinacridone in that red space. So do you guys have a preference that you'd like to see me experiment with? You know what? I'm actually going to not even give you the choice. I'm going to do quinacridone just because I haven't done a basic primary palette with these colors. I've always done the warm cadmium red medium or light. So all I need to do now at this point is take and drag this color over. It's going to be, you know, a lot thicker, a lot stronger as it goes towards these other colors. And then I'm going to have less and less because it's going to begin to mix with these other colors as I get over there. I'm going to go through a lot of paper towels today as I keep cleaning my brush. So I just dip it in my paint thinner or water if you're using acrylics. And I just try to squeeze off as much. And then oftentimes when I want an actual clean brush, it'll take 2 hits of that. I'm going to grab some of this red and do the same thing I just did with the yellow, but it's going to begin to mix. So you see that? All of a sudden we've got this nice band of red to orange. And the truth is, you guys, a lot of times when I set up, I don't actually even have a second red anymore. I found that the Quinacridone Red actually makes beautiful oranges. And it makes really beautiful purples. So I found that this Quinacridone Red can do so much more. And so I don't often need a cadmium red. So if you're actually wanting to do the split primary, you can almost simplify it and just use a quinacridone if you wanted to. But the cadmium red is very strong and again, very opaque, whereas my quinacridone is very transparent. You can see how transparent it is because you can see the line right underneath it. Whereas even my cadmium yellow covered that line quite well. So let's grab a little of the blue. You do the same thing.
Michael, excuse me. Are you working on a panel or is that paper?
That's a big piece of wood that I just put 3 coats of paint over it yesterday. I put 2 coats of house primer and then a coat of gesso over that.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, you can use anything. I just didn't, you know, I don't want to use a nice expensive canvas. It's just this, it's like a 1/4 inch piece of wood, plywood. So I'm just going to come back with my yellow a little bit.
I have a question.
Please. Go ahead.
What pigment code is your Quinacridone Red? Because I've got a Quinacridone Rose and it's more like a very bright pink.
Yeah, your Quinacridone Rose, I think, is a tiny bit cooler. It's PV19. What is yours?
Oh, let me just go and get it. Hang on.
Let's see if I have a tube of that. I use Quinacridone Magenta, and I've got Quinacridone Violet. I don't think I have any Quinacridone Rose. So yeah, so the Quinacridone Reds do come in varying colors. Quinacridone Violet is gorgeous. In fact, I just used it to glaze a big painting that kind of got too colorful. So I just used it to kind of harmonize the whole painting by glazing over that with, you know, making very transparent. Oh, here's another one that I did. This. So I just glazed over by putting the paint on very thin. So the Quinacridone Violet's a gorgeous color. It would be probably about here on color space, meaning that it's a little bluer. Let's squeeze a little bit out beside it and see if we can see the difference.
Okay, so my quinacridone rose is PV19 as well, but I've noticed that a few of the violets and reds, they're all PV19.
Interesting. I wonder if they're cooking them or something. I don't know how they change color in them. But yeah, you can see that that's the quinacridone violet compared to the quinacridone red, and it's much much more bluish, more purpley.
Well, so what number is on the violet?
Yeah, good question. Yep, PV19. PV19 and oh, my quinacridone magenta is PR122. Huh. But here we go. I'll just experiment. You can see the color.
I've been experimenting more with the quinacridone magenta.
Yeah, it's a beautiful color. I mean, there it is with white, and I'm gonna put the quinacridone red with white beside it. So yeah, you can see one's much warmer and much cooler. And I want to see if I add a little bit of ultramarine blue, where it goes, if it becomes closer to that color. Yeah. So when I add a little bit of blue to it, it starts to become, you know, quite a lot closer to the violet color. So a lot of times I will choose my color because I don't think I can make this violet as vibrant as this red, but I can make this red very close to that violet. So again, I'm trying to choose the least amount of colors that give me the biggest bang, that I can do the most with. Hopefully that makes sense. Just get that out of the way.
As part of your color wheels, are you going to mix these colors then with grays?
Yeah, I was thinking I would do that here.
Okay. And do you pick just a middle gray, or do you do like a 3, 5, and 8, or what do you?
You typically make my own, and we'll talk about that here in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, good questions. So now I'm just going to take this blue, bring it across towards our red, so my ultramarine, bringing that across towards the quinacridone red. So yeah, you can see, you know, I've been in classes and workshops where they want these like perfect little circles, you know, and everything's spaced out. But I find that seeing the gradation as they change, you know, colors to be actually pretty helpful. A lot of times when I'm mixing my colors, I love just watching how the colors bend. So I'm just going to grab the red, the quinacridone, and I'm going to bring it back towards the blue. It's going to make a purple, of course, and it's going to be quite dark. So it makes a purple, but it's very dark. So what I'm going to do is simply grab some white, put it here, and grab some of that. I should have grabbed the purple first. Want a little bit of that mix. And it makes these beautiful purples. All right. So actually, you know, if I was to do a very limited palette nowadays, I would probably choose these 3 colors, because this makes a prettier purple than when I was using a warm orangish red, right? You saw that earlier. It makes a pretty nice green, and it makes a pretty nice orange. So this is a much more successful color wheel than I used to get when I was using a warm, hot red. So that's not bad, actually. You know, when I'm traveling or when I'm plein air painting and, you know, maybe backpacking into somewhere, you don't want to take, you know, 10 pounds of paint with you. Want to keep it as light as possible. So if I just had to use 3 tubes and then a white, I think I could do a huge amount with this. All right, so let's use these 3 colors. Let me just make sure I get a nice clean brush.
Excuse me, which yellow is that again?
Right now I'm using a Cad Yellow Light, or you could use a Cadmium Lemon,
Okay.
or the colors I use now, because I'm not using cadmium, is I use the Hansa colors, which are more transparent and a little bit weaker in chroma. They're not as strong as the cadmium colors, but they're a lot cheaper and they don't seem to be nearly as dangerous.
Okay.
So I use Hansa. I buy Hansa from usually, like I said earlier, it took me a long time to actually find a tube of a cadmium of these cadmium colors, just because they're kind of hidden in the back of the drawer. I just don't use them very often. But that being said, most people do use cadmium colors because of their strength, and their opacity. They're very, very strong colors, but they are expensive, especially lately, and they are a little more dangerous. So, you know, I should be wearing my gloves, and you know, definitely wouldn't want anybody, a little kid or a cat or a dog, getting into the cadmium colors. A couple brands are coming out with cadmium replacement colors. They're called cadmium free, and they are pretty nice. I think there's still a little bit of work to be done on them, but I have experimented a little bit with that, especially when they give me free samples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 3 colors and I'm just going to make a new pile. I'm going to take my Quinacridone Red, my Ultramarine Blue. I'm just going to mix those together. What I want to do is create a very dark purple. So that almost appears black on the monitor already. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a pinch of yellow. Just a little bit. Because yellow is a light color. It would lighten these colors. But what it's doing instead is it's mixing across the color palette, and meaning it's neutralizing. So this purple mixing with a little bit of yellow is neutralizing it. So it's making it less purple and more like just kind of a gray or a dark color. And now I've made a very nice, strong, dark that could pass as black in almost anything I was painting. Okay, so that's why I don't use black, because now I've got this nice pile of dark color here, and if I needed warmer darks, like the lights bouncing around within my dark trees, I can just mix more red with it and I can make a nice warm dark, or I can add more blue with it and make a very cool dark, like something facing away from the sun without reflected light getting into it. So I don't think black hardly ever when I'm painting. And I could also even add yellow to it and just make a very, whatever that dark is called. Right, so I don't think black very often. And the truth is, you can use grays to neutralize down, but grays have white in them and black in them. And so you're already, those, you know, you want to think of your white and your black as color. It's not like it is with white, just the absence of color and all colors combined. It's pigments being mixed. So white, I almost think of white as like a very, very, very light blue, because if we notice, when we mix white with a high chroma color like this cadmium red, it's not just going to make it lighter, it's inevitably going to make it cooler as well. You see that? So if I was painting clouds being hit by the sunset, it wouldn't be enough for me just to add white to the bright red. to make the clouds look lighter where the light's hitting them? Probably, because it's just becoming pink. A lot of times I need to come back in and add yellow or some kind of a warm color back into that to retain its vibrancy. That makes sense? Same thing with black. Most blacks are just made from a lot of really strong, dark blues. So just being aware of that. So in this class, for the most part, I'm going to kind of urge that you don't use much black and you learn how to control white. You guys have all had this happen in your paintings where all of a sudden you're just like, I'm using white to lighten things, but instead of looking lighter, it's just looking chalky, right? So the over-reliance on white can really just deaden colors. So I'm cleaning that off. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to do something. Let me remix that dark real quick.
You're using the Cad Yellow, touch the Cad Yellow to do that, right?
Yeah, so you're making a super dark purple, and then when you mix a little bit of yellow, so you're mixing across the color wheel,
Mhm.
it neutralizes. It
Gotcha.
deadens that purple, and then basically it's taking the color out of that purple a little bit. So now let's do a gray scale. So you can see that when I add white to it, it's still appearing kind of purplish. So if I really wanted to, I could have added more yellow, but you can see that I can make beautiful grays. Let's even add a little yellow to it. And but anyways, I typically make my own grays and I make my own darks with whatever colors I'm using. Because I rarely see things as just dark. You know what I mean? It's not, usually things aren't just the lack of light. They're usually darker of whatever it is I'm painting. So if it was a red apple, right? Let's just show you really quick. If I was just painting a red apple, it would be much more interesting than just saying the light's coming from this direction. If I just say, okay, well, the light's hitting this side of the apple and it's not hitting this side of the apple. Let me clean that brush a little better. Right, so it gets a very weird look. So, if it's a warm light, I might be adding some yellow to the red. And then it would be transitioning into the shadow side of the, right? You can see how that all of a sudden gets a form and a shape. So you want to pay attention to the temperature of the light that's hitting it. If it's a warm light, it might almost even start leaning towards orange, or yeah, orangish in the warm. Isn't that interesting how quickly you can just take this red ball and make it a red circle and just make it into almost a three-dimensional looking object? And that's by temperature shifts and value shifts. Try and keep my colors kind of clean here. Do all my mixing in the middle. But that's the hard part about having dirty brush. So yeah, I mean, if you want to use, you know, grays, that's fine. Or if you want to use black, that's fine. But I would like to show you, and I'd like you to try maybe to not use them and to experiment with making your own darks. And maybe we don't think black anymore. Maybe we think darks, darker colors, cooler color, you know, cool darks, warm darks. Yeah, I find people who rely on black, it just deadens their painting, and they're just missing so much opportunity within the shadows of things to really share beautiful colors that are in the.
Michael? Just noticing here, if someone did at some point in time want gray, Gamblin does their Torrid gray every year around Earth Day, which is they clean out all their filters. And so Torrid gray every year is a slightly different color based on what was in their mixing machines. And sometimes at art supply stores, they give them away for free.
Yeah, I probably have a couple tubes of that around here somewhere. Yeah, because when I open up my drawer of blacks or darks, within there, I love Payne's Gray. I use Payne's Gray quite a lot. But I'm very purposeful in how I'm using it. And I do have a neutral gray in this drawer, but you can tell how much I've used it by how it's been pushed at the bottom compared to I've used it never. But maybe we can experiment with different grays during this class too. That's a great thing about a class like this is our opportunity to experiment with, colors. What's this one? This is a cold gray from another brand, Rembrandt. So a lot of them I just don't really pull out because I'm not spending time experimenting. When I need to be making paintings, I don't want to be picking out colors. I don't know what they do. So classes like this are a great opportunity for that. All right, so we've got that. Very, very limited palette, still a nice range in there. Now we're going to quickly do our split primary palette. So I'm just going to grab the yellow. I'm going to go towards this, my Indian yellow, and then I'm also going to go towards my manganese blue. All right, I'm going to grab my Indian yellow, and I'm going to mix towards my cadmium yellow light. Clean that off. And I'm going to mix towards my cadmium red light. Clean my brush off. So again, I've put it in my paint thinner over here, which is just a big metal tin with it, and it has a little mesh on the bottom. And then I just take it to my paper towels, and I simply pinch in between the paper towel, and I'll even give it a little bit of a bend, and then I just look, and I keep doing that until I'm not getting any color any longer. So now I'm going to go to my cadmium red, go towards my quinacridone red, and towards my Indian yellow, which is going to make a very, very hot orange, which when added to white is going to be really nice. One of my favorite colors is peach or salmon. So I love a little bit of white into my oranges.
Peach fuzz is the color for 2024, just so you know. That's the latest PMS color.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. So maybe it was you that shared that with me.
You're ahead of your time.
Yeah, years and years.
Excuse me, Michael, this is Cheryl. I'm gonna have to leave and go get the kids. I just got a call that they can't get home from school, so I may or may not be back before you're done.
Okay, well, I'll be finishing this off, and maybe I'll save these for next week. Doing some examples here because I'd like to get to doing, well, actually I need to neutralize for the assignment. So anyways, great. Thank you for letting me know, and have fun with the kids.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Using that brush. Grabbing some ultramarine blue. And bringing it back in again. It's just going to be just the same as down here because that's the same colors. And we already know that if we add the white to it, makes nice, it's hard to see the purples because they're so dark, but that's something we know that we can use to create a very dark color. So just reiterating that. I'm going to take my ultramarine blue towards my manganese blue. Bring my manganese blue back. So right in the middle there, where those two meet, is very close to a cobalt blue. Cobalt's a very expensive color, so when I found out I could kind of make it or something very close to it, it's not a true cobalt, of course, but it mimics it very closely. I was pretty thrilled. My manganese blue, I'm just going to take that towards my cadmium yellow light, and here's where having the split primary really reveals itself. Get these beautiful, vibrant springtime greens, which I don't paint very often, but I keep hoping golf courses are going to start hiring me to paint big murals for them or big paintings, and then I'll be able to use my springtime green color. But one of my favorite color combinations, just like the peach over here, I love the manganese with a little bit of that cool yellow and some white, makes these really great, wonderful, kind of almost aquamarine colors, right? And you can really see in this example that adding white to this turns it towards an aquamarine, not just a light green. So it's interesting how white adjusts color, how black adjusts color. In this mix, if I wanted to make a real dark, I would probably use I'd use the same same blue and the same little bit of yellow, but I would actually go towards this red, my cadmium, and then I can make an opaque dark. So because the cadmium is more opaque, like this one will be fairly transparent. This one is going to have more coverage. I could, really get in there and make a very dark. All right. So if I want to make a darker cadmium red, I can simply use that dark color there. And now we can see in the shadow of the apple that it's just not purple, but by using that dark, you can really get in there and create the idea of no light in that space. All right. Now we're going to do,
I'm sorry, Michael, did you add a touch of yellow to that too, or just the cad red and cad orange and?
Yeah, so what I used was the ultramarine blue, my cadmium red medium, which is really strong. So it's like a 60% to a 30% to a 10% maybe.
And then a touch of the yellow.
Yeah, and I can always test it by adding just a touch of white to see how neutral of a gray have I actually made. Because it's so dark, I can hardly see into it. That's pretty neutral. Let's add a little more white. Still leans a little bit purple, but again, I don't really ever need a true neutral. So I can just bend that by adding a little more yellow to, to get rid of purple again, or mixing across the color wheel. So if my grays are a little too purple, add a little bit of yellow to it, and it knocks it down, knocks that gray down. So that, if you only take one lesson from today, you guys, it is that when I make a very vibrant color and I want to neutralize it, mix across the color wheel. So purple with a little bit of yellow, red with a little bit of green. Let's see that really quickly here. So let's take this quinacridone. Let's add a little bit of white because it sure does become bright and very obvious. I mean, I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, when am I ever going to need this super bright pink? It's like painting bubble gum. But then I realized, but if I want to, maybe in clouds or in flowers or, I don't know, lipstick, I don't know, I can. But it's easy to neutralize it. So to neutralize this overly bright pink, I'm just going to take and mix some green. So I've got options on my green. I can mix the green that I use with my manganese blue, a little yellow to make it green. So I've got the pink on the brush already. So I added a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow, which would be green, and you can see how much more neutral it is a little already. Right? It's dulled down, but it still has beautiful color. Let's add more green to it. See, even duller, right? Do it one more time. Now it's really leaning towards almost a brownish color. Are you guys able to see that?
Yes.
Great. I could darken that color. I can lighten that color. I can try to re-brighten it a little bit, but still dull down. Right? So by mixing across the color wheel, I took this color out of the little white, but by knowing that if I want to dull down my quinacridone, I want to mix from across the color wheel, which is green. By adding more and more green, I get these beautiful, I find these colors much more interesting than this. Right? This is gorgeous and would be beautiful on a bouquet or on a dress or, something. But even if I was painting a super vibrant quinceañera dress, right? Just like my apple, it's going to have a, light source on it. So it might be a little darker away from the light. It'd probably be its most vibrant where the light and the shadows meet. And then let's give it a nice warm hue where the light's hitting it. And look how pretty that is, right? She's all ready for her big day. Unfortunately, she's blue. Right? See the depth and everything and how I'm taking that quinacridone and I took this very vibrant red and I neutralized it, created a shadow side, a light side. Obviously need to squeeze out more. What I had intended to do here was to take like a yellow on one side and purple on the other and make them meet in the middle, kind of like I've done over here, or I can make my big dark pile and can make it go towards my white, just to show you, kind of a gray scale. So having these little lines here are just great. I'm not scared to experiment with colors that maybe on my painting I would be a little sheepish about. But yeah, look at those. Isn't that a beautiful gray transition? Let's do cadmium red with a dirty paintbrush. And shall we mix across the color wheel? Let's try something different. Let's take our cadmium red and make a purple out of it. And I'm going to go all the way across. Instead of mixing I'm going to make my orangish red mix with my greenish blue. I'm going to put those on opposite sides just to see what happens, because those two are never meeting on my color wheel at this point. So let's, and I don't want to take much time. I'd rather get onto painting. I know that for a lot of people, that's kind of their favorite part of the class. But I hope that you guys see that how much fun this is and how much I'm learning simply by creating a safe space for myself to see what happens. So I told you blue and red make purple, right? Well, not necessarily when you're using a greenish blue and an orangish red. Makes a very odd, somewhere in there's kind of a purple, but I would say it's much more plum-like. But the truth is I probably see this color much more in nature than I would a really bright orange, right? So there I'm realizing that instead of just mixing side by side to mix the purest version of a purple or the purest version of a green or the purest version of an orange, that when I skip over and use colors, let's try, actually you already know what's going to happen here. It's one of my favorite colors. I'm going to do the Quinacridone Red and my Manganese Blue instead of the Ultramarine Blue, which is the one sitting right next to it. I actually really like this purple. I use it quite a bit.
Will you do a little color code, a little code labeling like QR or something on the sides after it dries?
I would probably put more like the names of the paints that I mixed. But yeah, possibly. But I haven't memorized all the QR and all the different chemical makeup names.
No, I meant like QR for Quinacridone Red.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to put my Quinacridone over here just so it's not right next to this red. And I'm going to do my Manganese Blue. I'm going to go ahead and just grab a clean brush so you guys don't have to watch me clean brushes all day.
So on the second line, is that ultramarine or no?
That was Manganese, yep.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and pull that aside because I love this purple. Where should I put it? I'll put it here. And add a little white so you can see it, so it's not just a big black dot.
And that's ultramarine blue or the manganese blue?
This is the Manganese Blue with Quinacridone Red.
Okay.
I love it in clouds and dark water.
Boy, you could make color wheels like this for a year straight without stopping.
Oh yeah, so fun.
A combination that I look at on my color wheel from your class before that I like a lot is a green made with the manganese blue and the Indian yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Give
That
me
is
one-
pretty green.
My brain's not letting me listen to you. Give me 1 second. Yeah, just, I don't know, these are kind of neutral colors. I'm sorry, and what did you say there, Michelle?
Well, I was just saying, the Indian yellow with the manganese blue, makes a really pretty olivey green.
Yeah, let's do it. You're right. That is, I love making greens out of my Indian yellow. So did you say out of the cadmium or, I mean, out of the
Manganese.
manganese? So that'll be a little pure. So I'm going to put my manganese on this side. So far, this is my manganese trilogy going on here. For those of you who haven't painted a lot or who paint with like 37 colors laid out because you basically choose the tube of paint that you think you need as exactly as possible, this is going to be kind of shocking, you know, coming in here and making all of the colors yourself, but you're going to learn so much. Both very transparent. You can sure see the line underneath it, huh? Both manganese and Indian yellow are very transparent. Yeah, but I love colors in here. Reminds me of kind of end of summer grasses, and you could almost do like a grass from like here to here, where it's like the bottoms of the grasses up towards the tops of the grasses, or the grasses in shadow towards the light side of the grasses. I'm going to do that color as well with white. Let's see what kind of a green that makes.
It's almost a sap green.
Right, yeah. Gorgeous. I mean, I find myself getting so infatuated and then just continually asking what if. All right, so now we're going to skip ahead and we're going to do making browns. I want to create some browns in here. So the easiest way to make a brown is simply just to take 3 primaries, one of each color. And you could choose kind of ad hoc almost. And I can make browns very quickly. So there I've got kind of a dirty, burnt orange color. Let's add a little more blue to that. All right, we're getting towards a warm, orangey, a little darker.
So that's with the Indian yellow?
Oh, maybe.
Oh.
I don't remember. Sorry. Yeah, probably. But you know, we can just vary it. Like I don't believe in formulas because they just don't work. Like, you know, I remember painting out at teaching a workshop out at the Oregon coast, and people are just like, you know, what colors do you put together to make the color of the ocean? And there's no color of the ocean, right? It changes by the minute. It changes by the angle.
So what does ignorant mean?
Just by the mood of the water. Let's try mixing a little bit of every color.
For more, ask me to give you more definitions for ignorant.
Someone's mic.
Hey,
is-
Alexa.
So here's all 6 of my colors mixed up. Right? Obviously my reds are stronger. So I could decide, well, I've made a very brown, dark brown red. My cadmium color is so strong, it's definitely dominant. So I'm just going to grab some more blue. But yeah, I often get asked by students how to make brown. And I almost kind of wonder to myself, how do you not make brown? Because everything always ends up brown. Anytime you mix all 3 primaries, you end up with a brown. Even these really dark colors could be considered a brown. So it just depends, like if you wanted a bluish brown, you know, is it a purpley bluish brown, then maybe I would choose this blue and maybe a little more of this red. Is it a yellowish brown, then I would simply, is it a cooler yellowish brown? Then probably just some of my lemon yellow.
Michael, what color are you going to try to replace the Cad Red mediums with?
I have found that I can pretty much do it all with my quinacridone. Otherwise, I'm experimenting. I don't know. Here, I'll aim the camera down again. My red drawer is definitely my busiest drawer.
Wow. Yes.
So like within here, I've got Naphthol Red, Naphthol Scarlet, but Naphthol Red is the color that's been suggested to me. Cadmium Red medium. There's just so many, and then I'm trying to decide, like, what's this one called? Rosso Sandolo. I don't know.
I found a transparent red medium that's pretty close to Cad red, only it's transparent, but the color is pretty close.
That's transparent red medium right there. I haven't used it yet. Yeah, I've got all sorts of colors in here.
Because I would like to get away from using the cadmiums altogether also.
Yeah, so Gamblin, when I called him, talked to Scott Galatly over there, Naphthol Red is the one he's suggesting.
Okay, I have that. I like it.
Yeah, I think that's what I've been using the most lately is Naphthol. It's just slightly more transparent as well. It's a semi-transparent.
Right.
So if you need the opacity, I can still squeeze out my CADs or figure out another way to do it with, burnt umber or something else like that. But yeah, you guys can see how, with this color wheel, in fact, on our Padlet, I posted one of Michelle's color wheels from before, and you can see she just had such a good time. She made this really beautiful abstract painting out of her thing, but you can mix your colors across here. You can put them here. You can create values, wherever you want. But what I want you guys to do this week is to just play and experiment and just ask questions. Another great thing you can do is say, okay, well, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go ahead and change this off and bring up a small painting.
Michael, I'm glad you showed us your red drawer because I have a lot of paints and I have to admit, I was glad to see you have a lot of different colors too.
It's scary when you start realizing each one of those tubes is like $20 to $100.
Painting is expensive.
Really, it can be. But that's why, getting away from the cadmium colors sure does save, because the Hansa colors are half the price. So let's do a quick demo of this painting that I attached to your guys's email, if you want to. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to repaint this really quickly, loosely. I'm not going to worry about detail and stuff. I guess I could hang it up over here. I know you can't see it so well. I'll move this back over a little bit closer. Maybe change this angle. I think when I showed you the drawer, the placement of the camera moved a little bit. All right, so let me quickly just clean this palette off. And for no other reason than I have those colors up, unless you guys want to suggest some colors. But I'm just going to kind of mix up some browns out of these primaries. So my big goal today by doing all this was to show you that I can make grays and I can make lots and lots of browns. I've got a number of students over the years who are like, oh, I couldn't never not use my my yellow ochre, for instance. Like, oh, I just need that color. And then I just very quickly just show them yellow ochre is so easy to make. Like, you can have it. There's nothing wrong with having any color on your palette, but you don't need it because you can make it so easy just by you know, boom, yellow ochre. So, you know, a lot of times when I think I, you know, need a color or I can't mix it, I'll squeeze it out and then I'll just see, can I make that color using the colors I have? Right now I'm just making a dark. All right, you guys saw that? I just kind of grabbed randomly, but then I can adjust it. I can say, okay, it's still a little bit orangey. Let's add a little more blue. So I think of my colors as almost like spices, like, oh, it's a little bit, you know, needs a little more salt, just a pinch of this. Oh, it needs, you know, a little more oregano, just a pinch of this. So like when I'm making my colors, I can look at them and say, you know what, I want a cold, shadowy, dark. So it's going to have more blue in it, right? And I can decide, do I want it more towards purple or more towards green? That might help me decide which dark I use. But I also know that I want some warm reddish darks. So I can simply just alter that by adding a little more warm into it, maybe a touch of yellow, so it's not just, grab a little bit of that. There we go. What else? Okay, I know I need probably some oranges. So you can see this is just a great way that my colors stay kind of harmonized, stay, they're related to each other because I have limited ingredients to put together to make my mix. And so it's, I prefer a limited palette. I find when I have too many colors out, a number of things happen. Once I mix the perfect color, I have a very, very hard time remixing that color because I've got so many colors to choose from, right? When I am running out of a color that I need, I don't often notice because I've got so many colors in my palette or in my drawers. So having less colors, I'll be like, oh, okay, I'm running out of quinacridone or I'm running out of white or whatever else. So I know I can replace it. It also makes shopping a lot easier. I do a lot of my shopping online. When I find big sales, I'll stock up on, you know, my certain colors. In fact, in this, see this big white chest over here? It's actually got a bunch of paint in it too that are still in their boxes, just because I know what colors I use a lot. I use a lot of the lighter yellows and I use a lot of white. And then because they're both kind of weak and white goes with everything. I've heard Gamblin say that they make as much white as they make of all their other colors combined. And I believe it because I sure go through a lot of white. So I'm just making up a bunch of colors right now that I'm going to use on this painting. But what's so nice is I can already see this beautiful harmony within these colors. So I'm keeping them within the brown family. I'm keeping them kind of on the warmer side for a lot of them. A lot of times what I'll do when I paint, and we'll talk about this in future classes, is I'll make up great big piles of color that I think I'm going to use. And they don't have to be, I don't need to pre-mix every color that's on here, but I'll make a nice good sized pile of certain colors. And then I call those my mother colors, and I can keep drawing into them to mix other colors. And the cool thing is with a mother color, when you get a big enough pile, I can pull from it, alter it, but it's still related to the mother, right? For those of you who are interested in tonalism, can you guys see the use in this? Where I'm really neutralizing my colors kind of just worrying about lights, darks, warms, and cools, but less so in truly what colors I need. That's again why I like working from black and white a lot of times, because I find sometimes that colors, just trying to mimic colors, trying to copy them perfectly, is a bit of a trap for me, and usually will hinder my painting. I want to get into the more creative side. So I'm just going to add a drop of paint thinner here, and let's start sketching. I got my creek, comes up like this. There's a bit of a turn here. And that comes across right about there. Not that far though, right about to there. And it comes up to there. And across there. And then I've got my horizon line, which is normally what I would put in first. Whenever I'm doing landscape painting, horizon line is typically the first thing I do. That's where the sky and the land meet up. And that just gives me my placement. I generally don't want my horizon line right in the middle of my page. It will deaden it. Let's see how fast I can do a little tiny landscape painting here. Oftentimes paint from big shapes to little shapes. So you saw that I split the canvas into about 4 big shapes there, just with the lines. Give myself a bit of a design structure. Now I'm putting in lights and darks, you know, as well as some temperature and color shifts. But and I'm just going to put everything in really quite loosely. I'm not going to worry about detail at this point, and probably never, not ever in this painting, because it's just a quick example of putting in colors and kind of coming up with colors. I paint from big shapes to small shapes. I also paint from thin to thick. So you'll see me pushing this paint a little further. I'm not putting it down in big, thick Monet brush strokes. I could later if I want, but generally I want to make sure I've kind of got my value structure and my lights and darks. I guess that'd be the value structure in there. And also just my drawing and my design kind of established. So I generally will keep the paints pretty thin for a little while. I don't try to get too thick too fast. I find it's harder to build up wet into wet when you have really thick paint right away. So by having it a little thinner, I can keep adding more paint. This is going to be kind of an alla prima, meaning painted all at once. And it's going to be almost more impressionistic. What color do I want? I want you. I want you.
Pretty colors.
Thanks. Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot to ask, what surface are you painting on?
It is a piece of wood with gesso on it. It's a birch panel, which is my favorite surface to paint on. I work with a company here locally, and they make birch panels for me. I mean, they would make them for you too. But I prefer wood over canvas. I just don't love the texture of canvas, especially because sometimes I paint really quite thinly. And I just don't like fighting with that texture. And I like to, I found that I prefer a cheap brand of Liquitex gesso. just because it's somewhat absorbent, but not too absorbent, but it's definitely not too very slippery.
And how thick does your panel need to be to prevent warping for that size?
Well, I can unwarp it by putting it in a frame, but for this size, almost as thin as you wanted would work. But I typically paint on a 1/8, and unfortunately, you're on the metric system, or you're in England, so inch.
Yeah. So I can get hold of 3mm laser plywood. Would that work?
Don't know. So a lot of times plywood has a lot of acid in it, whereas the birch. So it depends on what kind of wood it's made out of. So like the birch is nice because it's a low acid wood. So yeah, I would just definitely see if you can find out what the acid level in the wood is, because eventually
I think it's low because it's laser ply. I think that means it's higher quality, but we can't get birch over here anymore really because it's too expensive. So it's changed to poplar, which is a bit weaker.
Yeah, I know most of the birch came from Russia, and I had a heck of a time for a while there. They found some other Eastern European countries, I guess, that are willing to put down their forest for me. Yeah, I think, yeah, that sounds great. And then I will sometimes put down just one coat of primer, like a house primer, but oftentimes just 2 or 3 coats of gesso will kind of do it. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Is it oil-based primer that you use if you use that?
I don't like oil primed surfaces for me personally. They're too slippery and not absorbent. That is completely a matter of taste. I think it would be smarter if I used an oil primed surface, in theory, but I just don't like the working qualities of it for me. But most of my friends prefer an oil primed surface. So it just kind of comes down to what you get used to or how you work. So I'm just getting this guy kind of covered. So yeah. Do you paint on oil primed surfaces?
At the moment, I am using like canvas from a roll, which is already acrylic primed, and I just mount that onto plywood boards when I'm finished or before I've painted.
Right. Oh, I know where the sun's coming from behind me. All of a sudden the sun snuck out. There we go. Sorry about that glare that was on there. I was having a hard time seeing it myself. See if I can turn this light back on. So yeah, I'm hoping that what you're seeing is that this painting is all variations on brown, basically. And that and I'm gonna have to change how I put my palette or surface in here in just a second, because all right, let's do that real quick. You'll see this will make a big difference in our visibility. So what I'm going to do is I'm just taking this because I've got them on little spikes here, but it's deep enough that it casts a shadow. So I've just simply added a couple things to it. And added some screws onto the front of it here, and on the other one, because otherwise it's supposed to go behind this lip, right? I hate that. I hate not being able to paint all the way to the ends of my canvas. So by adding some screws and not putting them all the way in, I create this little thing that just holds my panels right like that. And now I've got the painting surface much more reachable for me.
That's a great idea.
Thank you, thank you. Very yellow, too yellow. Add some red to that. So I'm making a painting with very strong, vibrant, bright primary colors. I see on so many lists or so many websites where, or Facebook chat groups or whatever, where people are discussing, you know, how do you make colors for painting Tonalist? And everybody's like, oh, you just use Payne's gray and all these earthy brown colors. But I've really found that you can make so many more interesting colors when you make your own colors out of strong primaries and just neutralize them. I've got so much more possibility for, you know, making all these different colors.
I watched Dennis Sheehan last night before the internet went out, and that's exactly what he does. He did.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I like his paintings. He's probably one of the first people that really inspired some of my tonalist work and kind of going in that direction as far as a modern painter, because of course you got all the wonderful painters throughout history.
But once he got like
That Kevin that I've been looking at uses ultramarine, Indian yellow, and quinacridone magenta for his 3 primary and mixes those up to make his dark. And then depending on what he's painting, he pushes with either more yellow, more blue, more red. And that's how he does it. And he uses all transparent and then layers it. And he said that's how he gets his luminescence.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I actually have one of his videos. I just haven't quite gotten to watch it yet, I guess. I kind of forgot I owned it.
What was his name?
Kevin Corder.
Okay.
So yeah, this is going to be fairly opaque at this point, but I'm going to show you guys something here because all this paint's quite thick that I put on there, right? You guys have probably seen that as I've been progressing with it. I'm going to put some transparent color. So that's Indian yellow. And I'm just going to scrub that kind of into here real quick. And I want to show you guys another little trick for creating glow and differing effects when you use thick paint and thin paint together in the same image. I feel like people who only paint really thick and opaque are missing this amazing thing that oils want to do. They want to paint thick and opaque, but they also love to be transparent and glowy and show you. So I'm going to do something kind of crazy here in just a second. All right, so you guys see the painting there? The colors are all a little wonky and weird, but do you guys see all the browns and different shades that I was able to make in this?
Yes.
I'm about to destroy it. So destroy it and rebuild it. But that's what I really want you guys to do is just, again, play with these colors. And I want you to, you know, make the secondaries, which mean, you know, yellow and blue makes green, yellow and red makes orange. Those are the secondary colors, purple, orange, and green. Learn how to make those and make variations on those. But then I want you to make the browns and the grays and all the other colors. So maybe try to stay away from a pre-mixed brown and try to stay away from a pre-mixed black, just so you can learn. I'm not saying you need to do that forever and ever and ever for the rest of your painting career, because I don't do that. I mean, I still love browns and blacks and grays and everything else. But I think it's really a great tool to learn to mix and as many colors as you can. And yeah, so okay, so there we go. We've got this painting. I'm about to destroy it just to show you something about transparency. So I'm just going to take and smush it all down. Smush it all down. smush it all down.
This with a dry brush?
Yeah, this was just a big, dry, cheap house brush. So I'm not pushing as hard as I can. I'm just pushing hard enough to smear the paint. And this is not like how I would always do it, but this is going to be a kind of a good opportunity for me to show you something. I'm trying to remember, the glare goes away when I do the brush strokes this way, right?
Right.
All right. Now I'm going to grab my paper towel. Oops. That one had a lot of paint on the bottom of it. I've got it all over my hand. I'm going to grab a clean paper towel. And I'm just going to put it around my finger. Nope, it's better in the dark. I'm going to add a little bit of paint thinner to it now. And a clean spot. So that transparent color that's on there, I just went and wiped a bunch of it off. But now I can take my paint thinner and I'm going to wipe it even a little further back. And what I'm hoping is that it's kind of stained that surface. And this is one of the reasons I don't like painting on oil prime, but I do like painting on gesso that's slightly absorbent because it's sucked in some of that transparent color. So it's kind of just stained it. So all of a sudden you see like a line of trees beginning to appear there?
Yes.
So transparent paint does not only for glazing, like after a painting's been worked on for a little while, but also in the wiping away, transparent paint and opaque paint behave differently. Opaque paint you can actually wipe off more than you can with transparent paint, because transparent paint somehow wants to stain more often or faster. And this doesn't need to be a one-way shot. Like just because I'm wiping away doesn't mean this is the final stage of the painting by any means. This is just a way for me to kind of get in there, design it kind of quickly. I can come back in with brushes and new colors and everything else and paint right on top because it's nice and thin.
Now the luminosity begins.
Yeah, exactly. And it helps me just to see the structure of it again, that lights and darks. I can get some hinted at detail very quickly.
Wow.
So isn't that interesting with opaque paint, transparent paint, all super bright primary colors, all neutralized down to create ochres and warm gold oranges and some kind of almost umbery browns. Hit the paint thinner one more time. Let's even make those brights brighter. Lights lighter, I'm sorry, lights lighter. This will take practice, and this does not work very well with the acrylics because of their drying time and everything else. But there, you know, with the acrylics, the magic is that you can just layer so quickly because they dry so fast. So, you know, sometimes there's the advantage to that, but sometimes oils have the advantage because of their slower drying time and more malleable, more, I almost think a lot of times of when I'm painting is that my, it's like carving. I'm like sculpting, I'm moving things around, yeah. I can keep changing things for a while with oils. And I can also let them dry and then paint over the top of them and do differing effects. I'm adding a little more of a kind of an opaque, cooler color there. Maybe a little bit of fog back here will be nice. Let's take some of that and add it along the edge of the water too, because I think a little bit of fog probably is sitting on the water there. So fun. We're all Bob Ross now, talking to my painting. A little bit of happy fog.
He painted happy everything.
Yeah, I try to mostly as well. Yeah, there's times, there's a whole channel on YouTube of Bob Ross, and I definitely found myself from time to time just having him on talking. Not, I don't really watch and see what he's doing because I'm painting, but just yeah, what a nice voice, and yeah, keep the workspace happy
Yes.
and peaceful. That's the thing about our studios and our workspace, is that we get to design it, and you know, you want to make it into a space you want to be. You know, if it's all messy, I mean, depending on your personality, I'm not going to say messy is wrong. You know, some people are more comfortable in messy places. But for me, I like it, you know, organized enough. I like to be able to find things and get to things. I also know that I'm lazy enough that if things are too far out of reach, I'll just, I don't need it. So, and I do like some semblance of organization. My studio definitely gets crazy and chaos, especially in the middle of great big projects, or, you know, when I'm really busting butt trying to get ready for a show or something and finish a whole bunch of paintings all at the same time. I can come back in with my darks and add detail. It's not one way or the other. It's, you know, I often like to paint from dark to light, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to come back in with darks and kind of hint at detail. With these trees, are you guys able to see those trees clear enough, or should I move the camera a little closer?
I can
I
see
can
that.
see them.
I don't know why I asked them. I'm going to do it anyways. So I'm going to try and bring a little detail into it. Those of you who've been with me already know what my next weapon is of choice. Q-tips. So I can just take these Q-tips and I can basically come in and start carving out little bits of detail. I don't want to overdo it because there's a lot of atmosphere back here. These trees are kind of soft edged, but it would be nice maybe to be able to peek in between some of them. Maybe there's a little more light coming a little lower, maybe towards the top. I can sharpen the tops of them a little bit. You know what I mean? Make it look like they're actually pine trees and not just big odd shapes sticking up. Can do that down here too. bring up the light from that sky is hitting the top planes of these grasses back here, so I can bring back a little more detail, you know, a little easier than my big fat fingers with paper towels on them. I can get a little finer detail. What I do have to be aware of though, when I use Q-tips, especially if I use it a lot, is that it's making the same shape over and over. It's making that little Q-tip shape. And so I want to be aware of that. I'll usually come back in with a paintbrush and kind of, you know, soften some of it, change some of it a little bit. But yeah, I use so many tools when I paint. I use so many different types of brushes, lots and lots of old obliterated brushes, lots of cheap house brushes. I use old credit cards to paint with. I use printmaking tools. When I'm out in the field painting plein air, I'll pick up branches or grasses just to create different textures. I'm a big believer in experimentation, trying things, but also just having fun and just seeing and creating varied marks and creating diversity within the surface area. You know, thick paint, thin paint, big strokes, small strokes, transparent paint, opaque paint. I want oil paints to be able to do all the things that they can, right? I don't want to limit them. It's, you know, I'll talk about that more when we get to brushes and stuff, but a lot of people, like my favorite brush is what's called a flat, which are these kind of squared off tip brushes. And so many people just make the same mark with them over and over. But by spinning your brush slowly as you're painting, you can make, you know, big, broad, thick strokes. You can make thin, and, you know, little detail brushes or marks just by using the pointy, you know, the sides of it, especially if you keep them in decent shape. Yeah, so we're going to have a lot of fun in this class. In this class, you have permission to play. If you're not able to give yourself permission to play, I demand that you play. Otherwise, you're not going to get an A+ in my class. I want you to experiment. I want you to do things that maybe you wouldn't do left to your own devices. And then I want you to report back to us on the Padlet or in class time and just let us know, you know, what I discovered, either what to do or what I could do, or definitely what I'm never doing again. You know, I'm never using an egg beater on my painting again. That didn't work out. Or, you know, check out these color combination. It's kind of unexpected and magical. So there
I
we
love
go.
that softness. Oh my God, it's so beautiful.
It's perfect.
You win. That's a prettier painting than a photograph.
Bravo.
That photo from this is the very first iPhone. This photo is pretty old, so I was lucky to get the quality that I got with that. But then again, it's, you know, it's gone through multiple iterations. Next week, or maybe on our own, I would like to do something like this, but only using these primary colors, no black. Wouldn't that be a challenge?
Cool.
Oh, ooh,
So would you guys want to do that next week?
yeah,
Yes.
that's exciting.
Cool. So for this week, you are more than welcome to use this reference. It does not even need to be warm colors. It could be all the blues that you were talking about. It could be, any colors you want. It could be greens. It could be, and you don't have to paint this image. You can paint any image you want.
Okay.
But what I want you to do is use the split primary palette, and I want you to create neutrals, browns, grays, greens. You know, I don't want super, super bright, garish primary colors. I do not want it to look like an ad for McDonald's or for a car lot. I want it to be earthy, kind of organic. Wow, that's just gold and orange and, you know, not my colors. So make it your own colors, whatever. I think this will look gorgeous in like auburns.
Oh, it's beautiful.
To be monochromatic, like this is all browns and golds, right? It could be, you could have green grass and blue sky. I don't care. I just want you to experiment and really try desaturating your colors by mixing across the color wheel. The homework was written down in the handout and or in the email that I sent this morning. I'm coming back over to the computer just to say hi and goodbye. Yeah, I mean, it's not a finished painting. I would definitely want to go back in and revise, and I can let it dry. I can, I can do all sorts of things with this. Probably I lost a lot of my structure by getting a little bit silly with it, but it was fun. It was fast. I think I painted it in just over, about 30 something minutes. So it doesn't need to be long. You can do the color wheel if you want. You do not have to. You can simply, you don't even have to paint an image. You could paint an abstract. You can paint just color charts, kind of like what I was starting to do underneath the color wheel. All I want you to do is play with the colors and practice desaturating by mixing across the color wheels. Everybody understand?
Seeing you paint that was amazing. It was
Thank you.
amazing.
Oh, you're so kind. I appreciate that. I'm always nervous when I step up there, especially for a new class. It's always a little bit it makes me nervous, but it also makes me excited. And you guys are definitely going to see me win some and lose some when I get up there. I'm always pushing, experimenting. A lot of times somebody will suggest something like, what would happen if you mixed these colors? And I don't know, let's see. And I think that's part of the fun. And I think that, sometimes the paintings are good, sometimes they're less good. And I think that's important to see as well. And that I'm having a good time no matter what. Painting and fishing and golfing and all those kind of weird activities are all the same, right? It's just about getting out there and doing it, having a good time, and trying to learn and get a little bit better. So yeah, thank you guys so much for being a part of this class, for joining me. And please get on the Padlet, introduce yourselves, share some of your work. And then as you are doing whatever it is you decide to do this week with these colors, please share that to Padlet. The easiest way is to download the Padlet to your phone, most likely, and just take photos and load it directly from there. Otherwise, you can take photos, send them to your computer and load them that way, whatever's easiest for you. Yeah, let's finish it with any questions about all of this. A lot. That was a lot. If I intimidated anybody, like, holy crap, I'm way over my head, Michael. Yeah, don't worry, Sharon, and don't worry, Nyla, and don't worry, everybody, because we're going to be going over this over and over in the class. We're all, again, at different levels. And yeah, if you ever need me to slow down, or if you ever don't quite understand what I'm saying, please ask. Please do not be shy. You are not the only person that didn't understand what I said, or thinks I'm going too fast. Somebody else will inevitably be like, oh, thank you for asking. The other thing is that I do go over a lot in every class. I get too excited. I get too into it, and I go very quickly sometimes. You can rewatch it. And other things, Lisa Holmberg and I have talked about this, and I've talked to Michelle about this, and students from the past, that sometimes it's not the first time you hear it and the second time you hear it. Sometimes it's the third time that you hear it that it begins to sink in or make sense. And the reason is because you're ready for it. You understand the precursors or whatever else, multiple reasons for that. But a lot of times it's, hearing it the first time, it's like, again, drinking from a fire hose, right? And we'll get there. And again, ask questions. The Padlet group's there for that. Yeah.
Michael, I have a question.
Please.
Which flat brushes you use?
Which size?
No, not the size, which company?
Oh, if you look in my drawer, I've got tons of them. Recently, my favorite ones are called Rainish. Let me see. I think I got one of them out. Yeah, Rainish by
Rainish.
Utrecht. RHENISH by Utrecht. I don't know anybody else that uses them, and I don't even know why I have them. But I sure like them. I mean, they really take a beating and hold their shape. Trakel makes some really beautiful brushes that really hold their shape. So you'll notice in the beginning stages of my paintings, I'm pretty mean. And I hold my brush like this and I scrub in there, and I don't want a really soft brush. I don't want a synthetic brush. I don't want a beautiful brush made of beautiful, cute animals. I want a hog hair bristle brush made from the spiky hair along the back of some Chinese hog who's had a hard life. And and you want to be brutal, and then I get to nicer brushes, but I keep my beat up brushes often for the beginnings of my paintings, because otherwise I just wear them down. I joke, but it's not really a joke anymore, that I pretty much only buy flats for the most part. I mean, I have all sorts of brushes in my kit, but my 90% of my painting is done with flats. But the truth is, as they get older, the edges wear down and they become filberts. So I make my own filberts. And then once those get really worn down, I can cut the tops of those filberts and then they become shorts. And so I get 3 brushes for the price of 1. Or a lot of times once they get beat up, they become amazing because they're all just chaos and crazy and they're great for texture. I use those chip brushes that you buy at Home Depot for like 35 cents each. I use those all the time. Those are probably one of my main brushes lately, just because I can't control them. I think you get to a certain point where you're almost longing to not get as much detail and stuff. I also chop up my brushes. I'll show you examples of those. When they get in really bad shapes, I just chop them up and make really crazy little weird brushes. And some of those are some of my favorite brushes for the finishing, where I come through and make weird grasses or, break up leaf structures or things like that. Little weird detail brushes that are very organic. Yeah. Otherwise, I like my bristles longer. I'll often look for the longest bristle flats that I can. They are going to be a little bit harder to control in the beginning for some people, but I personally love them. I think they have just such a gorgeous calligraphy and they hold paint really well. I do use some combinations of synthetic or a synthetic blend. But the truth is, with oils, pure synthetic brushes oftentimes are just too soft. You can use them for blending and feathering out things, but for the hardcore painting, picking up a lot of paint and getting it onto the canvas, I find a little bit firmer of a bristle to be preferable for me. Great. Anybody else? Oh, you'll also notice I did not use any medium today. I used barely a drop of Gamsol paint thinner. And when I mean a drop, I just dip the corner. I don't dip my whole brush. I just dip the corner of my brush into the paint thinner to add to my paint. I do not want sopping wet, juicy, drippy paint on my surface. I just add a little bit in the beginning stages of my painting when I'm doing the sketching or just kind of covering big shadow areas. I like it to be kind of the consistency, or it's almost like I do it more not by consistency, but by the drag. You mean, like how you can feel the paint. Sometimes it's a little sticky or sometimes it just slips along. If you put a lot of paint thinner, it just slips. I want it to have the consistent or the drag of a really nice fluid pen when you're writing. Not like a pencil that drags a little bit. And then I'll use either less paint thinner or different mediums if I want later on. But typically I stay away from mediums for the most part, unless it's for glazing or something else. So for those of you who are being bogged down with like, oh my gosh, I went to the paint store and there was a whole wall of different paint mediums and glazing mediums and varnishes, ignore it. You don't need it, and you can introduce it slowly. I've seen so many students who come home from the art store with, they look like mad scientists. They've got, 10 jars of different mediums and 10 jars of all these different things. We're going to try to keep it simple. A little bit of paint thinner if you're using oils, you know, and Gamsol is my preferred one, and some paints. And paint quality nowadays is so much better than it was in the old days. You really don't need the mediums. And we'll go over mediums and why you might want to use them in future episodes. Any other questions? Donna says no. Anybody else? All right, you guys are fantastic. Enjoy your lunch and or dinner wherever you are in the world. Sandy, enjoy your breakfast. 3 hours later, earlier than me.
It's martini time.
Yeah, Donna gets her martini and Sandy gets a Bloody Mary. For breakfast. All right, you guys, thank you so much. This was a ton of fun. I'm thrilled to at least see your faces. Can't wait to get to know you all better. And I can't wait. It's like going to camp. We all don't know each other, but by the end, we're going to be crying on the bus as we're going home because we're going to be so sad that we're not going to see each other again. So anyways, learn your camp songs and we'll talk to you guys next week. Shauna,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.